in terms of a paradigm or seeing the world, or especially seeing art, I think that everything is grounded in faith, and especially in a Christian faith, in understanding the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I think that there's no paradigm, there's no moral grounding, there's nothing without Christ, without a Christian religious worldview. And I think that is brought out just in just the simplest way. I think that's brought out in terms of the canon of literature and of understanding art, in terms of the fact that, just take it at its basic level, that if I love English literature, English literature dominates the world. The English language and English literature, it's the foundational art now in the world. I mean, and of course we have Greco-Roman literature, and there's Spanish literature and world literature, but in terms of what I cover, especially, and if I take, for example, Shakespeare, which I think is the foundation of the English language now. There are two foundations: Shakespeare and the King James Bible.
Yeah, there you go.
And all people had to read for hundreds of years was a Bible. The thing that is the font of all literature is biblical literature. That's where all allusions come from. It's where all, parables within any kind of system of English literature or movies, it all comes from that. So I see everything through that lens, and in a Platonic sense, I think that truth, beauty, and goodness are what uplift the human soul and the human spirit and point towards God.
I want to speak a little bit to literature, archetypes, words, language, and of course the Logos, the second person of the Holy Trinity, because really only Christianity is going to provide a real substantive interpretive understanding of what we're going to be diving into with this sort of undercurrent of meaning of great works. Why does literature matter? I mean, for many people, they would say aesthetics or quality. This is all subjective and relative. Our point, I assume you're going to be making as well, is no, this stuff is objective. And it's really fascinating that when you really just look at books, I'm surrounded by books right here, that it's just words on paper. Words are the composite of letters. And yet at the same time, this reading, as you talked about with your father and yourself, it's like the mind traveling distances in a way. Like reading is the mind in motion, moving through space and time, but at the same time, space and time's collapsing as we read. You talked about in your Great Gatsby stream, this is a work that was published, I believe, in 1925, and yet through, again, these words on paper, we have a glimpse into the mind of F. Scott Fitzgerald, capturing a real moment in history with the 1920s and, a new understanding of progress and wealth and, the entrepreneurial moving west spirit in America. So it's so fascinating that reading is this phenomenon, that we're engaging with language, and through language, time falls away. So I'll leave this open, and then we can start going back and forth. Where's your approach to literature then? Because as anybody who watches your streams, the quality and depth of your interpretive lenses is that you've read a lot of different things, and you're bringing a lot to interpret. And of course, it's always rooted in a sort of Christian paradigm. And then Christ being the incarnated Logos is that sort of the ethereal, the eternal, the ideal, meeting the actual material and temporal realm. Talk about a little, well, we didn't even get into your spiritual background, but talk a little bit about how all this stuff informs, what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, well, that was great. I think that it's a big topic, but it's essential. It's pretty big. No, but it's essential to understanding literature, and literature is, in my view, literature is essential to understanding the human experience. And what I mean by that is that when you mentioned subjectivity and sort of the impressionistic idea of art, especially of literature, those things are important, obviously, and we're all individuals, and we have our own opinions about certain works, and we look at things and they appeal to our experience, our individual experience. But like you said, objective meaning is essential to understanding or to having a worldview, first of all, the understanding of objective truth. And this is subjectivity and objectivity, or the sort of impressionistic versus the objective way of looking at literature, are sort of two sides. I don't mean that in sort of a dialectical sense, but they are two sides that are essential to producing meaning in work. And especially in my earliest streams, we started off with a lot of verse. We didn't get to prose until pretty recently. But when you look at verse, when you look at poetry, that's the whole purpose of poetry. Poetry is meant to be experienced. Verse is meant to be experienced in two ways. One is heard. It's meant to be heard. It's lyrical, it's auditory. And the other is seen on the page. I think that verse especially sort of crystallizes this idea of form plus content equals meaning. The way that things look and the words and the subtext and the things that they say produce a meaning. And that meaning, a lot of times in literature now, especially with modernity, one of the points with a lot of modernist writers is that in their worldview, they will try and say that there is no meaning.
Right.
So, and that's obvious. And you can see that with visual arts. You can see that with
abstract
literature.
Expressionism. I mean, this is part of the postmodern turn, in which which comes out of literary theory in the academy. That's saying, and this is where we can see where Protestantism kind of falls apart, because it was actually Protestantism that gave rise to these interpretive lenses. That how do we know what the objective meaning lying underneath any text, any written work is? Therefore, we are all reading into text. Literary theory then gave the foundation for then everything is an interpretive phenomenon, even my experience of the world, my interactions with people. And this is the sort of postmodern turn in the academy.
What we can get from reading and from literature is, it's on the one hand, it's what Plato said, right? Truth, beauty, and goodness. And I think that we need to have a vision. We need to have a view of the world where it's wider than ourselves. It not only allows us to escape, but it gives us an insight into the best of life. And sometimes the best of life can also be the worst, right? If you look at some of the more violent works of literature, like Blood Meridian or like Macbeth, which are extremely bloody, they have what Yeats called a terrible beauty, which is that they're beautiful in that they are perfectly constructed. It's the things that they say could never be said as well again. And that's really the point of literature, especially poetry, right? It's the best, if whatever the situation is or the thought, the way that the speaker speaks it in the poem is the best that it could possibly be said. This is why artists like Picasso or T.S. Eliot said that great artists steal, bad artists borrow, right? Because you think that you can say it better, but why do that if it's already been said here in a specific way? That's the best. And I think that with literature, it's like you remember things from literature because we tend to look at life in like a sort of parallel. Sometimes the things in our own lives are too difficult to comprehend or to understand by looking straight on at them. I guess an analogy I would make would be like, if you go outside and you look at the moon, and it's a full moon and it's beautiful, it's sometimes hard to focus directly on the moon because it's too bright, there's too much detail. And so we find ourselves sort of looking right beside the moon, right? It's sort of a peripheral view of the moon. Same with an eclipse. You can't look directly at the eclipse. You have to look at it in a reflection. And I think that is one of the things that literature accomplishes for us as people, like for our being, for our well-being, for our soul, is it allows us to look at situations in our own lives or in our own experience in a sort of a parallel view where we can apply this to this. There's a reason why, when you look at literary terminology and we talk about metaphors, a metaphor is not a comparison between two like things. It's a comparison between two unalike things. We compare things that are completely unalike in order to gain meaning from them. We see life through literature. We see that, Christ spoke in parables. We see things in parallel. Sometimes we get more truth out of a work of fiction. It may not be factual, but it's truthful. And that speaks to the human experience and what we're doing here. Because in my opinion, all art is focused on two things. It's focused on what are we doing here? What's our relationship with God? And how do we get along while we're here? What's our relationship with each other?
There it is.
And all of the art that is not focused on those things is specifically as a reaction or an anti against those things. So like when the guy, posts when Duchamp posted the urinal on the wall, right, at the art exhibit. It's a thing, and a thing is a thing is a thing, and it's modernity. But he's also making a statement. He's saying the world is a toilet, right? And that is in and of itself that delves into a kind of spiritual look into the way that we're living in the world. So things are things, but symbolism is also real. Nouns are concrete and abstract.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Oh, I can't, I can pick up a pack of cigarettes or a lighter, and that's a thing. I can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, hear it. And love, I can't touch, taste, smell, but that doesn't make it less real.
That's right.
I think it's important that, especially with literature, that there's no way for me to glean that information or that idea or that person's own understanding of reality if I don't know what they're saying in the first place. And ultimately, I think that, like you said, that there is no meaning without God. There is no truth without God. There is no, in all of literature, even when we read Moby Dick, for instance, and we have this sort of, it's almost an anti-God. It's a Gnostic, Luciferian quest for revenge and meaning. But notice that it is still one person's quest for meaning. They are still trying to, Ahab his understanding of God is not correct, but he still has this vendetta in his own Gnostic purview that he can reach transcendence or enlightenment through fighting this demiurge character. And you can't really understand that if you don't have a Christian perspective or a Christian mindset when you're reading it. There are many different circles, let's say, of literature, right? There are confessional poets, there's postmodern poets, there's the British Romantic poets, there's the neoclassical poets. But in the end, those are little circles, and there's only two circles that really matter. There's good and there's bad. Okay. And the bad circle is huge. It almost dwarfs everything good. And good work is not necessarily, it's not always uplifting. It can be something incredibly dark. Macbeth is my favorite play, and it's incredibly dark, megalomaniacal, almost nihilistic, but it's a beautiful work.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I agree with that.
And so I think that, that there are small circles of what are the top five, what are the top five, military movies, what are the top five comedies, what are the top five, there, and that's fine. That's fine for people to talk about. But in terms of great art, I think that great art, no matter the medium, will transcend those smaller circles. I just basically go through literature of all sort of genres and eras, British literature, American literature. And I started doing it because, I love literature and love reading. I always have. I have a big library, and I thought it was important to, not that there's an absence of this sort of stuff in our sphere, but I thought it would be, good for people, or just good for me, really, just to go back to the source of a lot of in the culture, or, in the media or whatever, a lot of terms and expressions and ideas are thrown around that come directly from literature, usually from classic literature.
So I thought it would be important for people to go back to some of the sources and to read the context, and to talk about, literature, specifically looking at, if it's poetry, then looking at the lines. We've done a little bit of prose, mainly poetry, because that is what sort of takes precedence in the history of literature for a few millennia. So
And
yeah, so
Shakespeare.
yes,
You've done a few
that's right.
Shakespeare
Yeah.
plays.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, so we've done a bunch of Shakespeare, and I actually sort of mean to veer away from Shakespeare and go into more modernist literature, but the difficulty is that so much of our language and so much of what we know comes directly from Shakespeare that you can always fall back on him. So Banquo says to Macbeth, basically, be careful, because he says the instruments of darkness sometimes win us with honest trifles, only to betray us in deepest consequence. This is so true. This is so true of every temporal thing that you're offered in life. The great, as long as you bow down, or kiss the ring or whatever it is, if you sell your soul, you can have all of these riches, you can have wealth and power. But what Banquo says to him is, you'll be betrayed in the end when you need it most. And that's exactly what happened. Macbeth is my favorite, one of my favorite works of literature. It's my favorite Shakespearean work, my favorite play. And it's so rich. The language is so rich. There's so much in Shakespeare in general, but especially in Macbeth, and that's relevant to today. So I just thought I would begin with that. I mean, you could, if you're an academic scholar, you could spend an entire career on one scene of Shakespeare. It's endlessly revelatory. It's endlessly rich. So I just thought I would do sort of a gloss over of the whole play, going into depth, in some places. But one of the points I sort of tried to make clear at the beginning was that I didn't want anybody to feel like in these streams like I was, I didn't want them to be didactic. I didn't want to seem like I was being teachy at people, because consider our audience. We have a very smart, sophisticated audience that is able to make connections and make inferences. And so I thought I didn't want to be teachy at people like I was, an annoying teacher. I just wanted to go through the literature with them and see what we could discover ourselves. If people are familiar with academia and the sort of trends in academia, especially, are sort of fads in which, for example, if you go to let's say if you went to a Wikipedia page on, King Lear or something, you're just an average person, you don't know what King Lear is, and you go to a Wikipedia page and you want a basic understanding of King Lear. Well, I'm not saying that you're going to get your best information from Wikipedia or not. I'm just saying that your understanding now would be that you would go there and you would probably see a heavy section on, for instance, the importance of femininity or the arguments about the patriarchy in King Lear. And the fact is that you may get some information out of that, and you may be able to glean some truth out of literature, but a lot of the things that we see now are sort of passing fads in terms of looking at what literature means, in terms of meaning. It's a false meaning. It's a meaning in terms of whatever the current, socio-political fad is, the arguments against the patriarchy. Right. But people need to be able to dig deeper. And the only way to dig deeper especially into a massive work, like for instance, King Lear or Hamlet, is to look at the words on the page, break them down, discuss how they interact with one another, and decide whether this work answers some of the essential questions of life, right? Whether it captures the human experience in a truthful way. And I think that's one of the problems, especially with modernity and with that's why, literature now, the literature that's being produced is so bad.
Well, Hamlet says, bring me to the test, and I the matter will reword that which madness would gamble from. Mother, for love of grace, lay not that flattering unction to your soul that not your trespass, but my madness brings. It will but skin and film the ulcerous place, whilst rank corruption, reaming all within, infects unseen. He's talking about love. right? He's saying, bring me to the test. I may seem mad, but this is love, right?
Literature, lives. It's living. It's always, especially in Shakespeare, there's always something that's relevant. Not because of like a generality in writing, but because there's so many levels of meaning. There's so much figurative language that great literature has to be true. It has to be true for any age. And sometimes great literature can become archaic. Sometimes it can, lose its relevance. But the great literature does not. So yeah.
That's what makes great literature great, is the ability to read something and you're actually transformed by it. And this is where, again, I know reading Moby Dick or The Great Gatsby, these aren't necessarily transformative life events. They could be, I guess, from a degree, but every time you're reading, every time you're engaging with the word, unless it is in this sort of haphazard, relativistic way, the only way that it's is worthwhile is that it has something there that you're confronting, you're taking away, and you, in a way, you really are transformed by it. And that's why reading and diving into books and making reading a serious habit is so essential for the mind. I've done streams talking about the literacy rates, and within the last 5 years, and they are on the decline. Like literally, we're becoming less and less literate every single year, which is going to make us more malleable, easier to be, duped into various other agendas. Won't get into any specifics, but reading is essential for critical thinking. The ability to read something again and take that as objectivity, and then reinterpret, glean things from it, compare it to other things you've read. This is part of the ability to critically think. And as we're talking about reading the postmodern, Aristotle talked about, the sign of an educated mind is to be able to hold two opposing ideas at the same time.
When you're reading, like for instance, if you're reading Orthodox books, right, what you're doing is you're reading directly, right? You're not messing around with setting or with like a different time and place. You're going directly to truth, and that's obviously its own power. I think that what's great about like Murakami or Dostoevsky or some South African, right, pick a place, is that we have this like variety, we have this wide variety of life here, and no matter what the great authors do is, no matter what the place, there's always this way that they draw us in, because the human experience is sort of common no matter where we are. They show rather than tell. And I think that in itself is kind of a lost art. I mean, that's one thing that the book, like you were saying earlier, with books, hard actual physical books going away, is that people are losing sight of the richness and variety of life. They think that, that's the thing, is that people sort of live in this illusion that by looking at, for instance, I don't know, TikTok videos, right, that we have like a diversity of life and that we're all connected. But the reality is it's a shallow connection, right? It's not real. And the thing that literature does is that, looking at a screen, or the best antithesis, I think, to reading would be video games. And I'm not criticizing video games. I think that's fine if you're into video games. But one thing that happens is you're sort of playing a false active role in something that's being projected at you constantly. All the work is being done by the machine. You're just like an NPC taking part. Whereas with literature, you have to actively use your brain to read the lines. And even reading a paragraph or a stanza is difficult for most people now, because not only because of the attention span, but because it just doesn't appeal to them. People don't see why we should care about, whatever the situation is, whatever the book, when they can just plug in and watch a video, or but even that is becoming too much for a lot of people. Watching videos, now it's clips, right? And you can see it sort of moving towards a direct Elon Musk, brain projection straight into the brain pan. It keeps degenerating, right? Where you just plug in and you're in your pod and you receive instant pleasure. I mean, look at movies, for example.
Right.
We know there's been like this desert of movies over the past couple of years.
They can't make anything original anymore.
They can't make anything original. And as you know, there's like 7 tropes with all movies that are made. And, and Jay's talked a lot about how movies continuously like recycle this sort of Gnostic paradigm in their movies. It's over and over. Another one is The Most Dangerous Game. That occurs like in 3/5 of the movies that come out now. That one's interesting on its own because I think that one hints at sort of the revelation of the method, or the sort of we start to understand that we're not only watching this movie about people hunting each other, but we are the prey watching it.
Right.
And so that we can get something from that. But other than that, it's interesting that there's no sense of like bravery in terms of like actually being intellectually brave in the work that's produced now. And the only way you can be brave now is by talking about something in terms of either a Christian lens or talking about objective truth, objective meaning, Christ, and those things that come out are so far, few and far between, because the illusion, the cover thing is, we're going to have this movie about, like for instance, I went back this weekend and I watched that movie Moonfall. And it is interesting that like, I watched this movie just imagining that I was someone else watching the movie and going, oh, wow, this is really interesting. And I've learned something about AI and the moon and aliens or whatever, and wow, this is pretty cool, and then leaving and immediately forgetting it, but thinking that I've discovered some sort of truth.
Right.
And anyone with any sort of discernment is watching this going, okay, this is absolute trash. I mean, it's fun, but it's fun because it's so stupid. It's fun because it's trash. It's just nothing new.
But we need to watch movies because, first of all, film is the major propaganda influencer in the world. It continues to be, even with the advent of the infinite scroll and TikTok and the internet, movies are still the major thing. And we need to, the infinite scroll, the doom scrollers. We need to watch movies because they really proliferate propaganda, and they are revelatory and relevant, and they are chock full of predictive programming. So we need to watch them to be aware of things in the first place. But also, movies are still cinema is still a new art. It's still a burgeoning art form, and we need to be exposed to things that uplift us. Truth, beauty, and goodness they still happen in movies, and they still are. It's still capable of doing that.
Do you think there's such thing as a religious movie? And do you have a favorite, quote, religious movie?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that The Thin Red Line comes to mind, the Terrence Malick. If people haven't seen The Thin Red Line, it came out at the same time as Saving Private Ryan. And it's almost like a dialectic. The Saving Private Ryan is a European theater, and Thin Red Line is the Pacific theater. This is World War II. And we're looking at Iwo Jima or Guadalcanal. And Saving Private Ryan was sold as an anti-war movie, but it really is a pro-war movie that's kind of masquerading as an anti-war movie. And The Thin Red Line was marketed as nothing. It just came out. But The Thin Red Line is an impressionistic prose poem. It's subjective. It's totally, it's almost a nebulous spiritual meditation, and it's
Nice.
Christian. The lead character is Christian in the movie, and it's about beautiful. It's about beauty in life, and you have various characters. Remember Nick Nolte's character in
Just-
the movie? Nature's cruel, Starles. Right?
You're going to go up
see
that
those
hill. This is
vines
what
twist-
you're going to do. You're going to go up that hill and you're going to get up there. And God damn it, if I have to hear from you one more time.
So some of the men are thirsty. Okay, we'll get them some water. See the vines circling around everything. Nature's cruel, Starles. Right?
Nature's cruel, best line. And remember,
Yeah.
Staros is he's lighting candles the night before the battle. And he's a Greek guy, so we know what that was
Yes.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is really suffering in the movie because he hates war and he doesn't want his men to suffer, and he's painted as a coward in the movie. But the various characters, there's various kinds of bravery and courage in the movie,
Yes.
and there's a moral courage and a moral bravery in that movie. Where, for instance, the Jim Caviezel character in the movie is obviously a kind of he kind of is a it's like almost like a Christ-like parable journey within the movie. He's willing to sacrifice himself for others. He's gentle, he's kind, but he's a great warrior.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? He's meek. He fights for the injured, but he also doesn't flinch and he doesn't cry. He's not he doesn't run away.
Remember when he says,
Yeah.
"Where'd all this evil come from? How'd it get into us?" It's just fantastic. One of my favorite.
And they're surrounded by this lush, green, unspoiled nature, but we sense that we're just outside Eden.
Yeah.
When we're watching the movie, it's like Eden was there, we've been cast out, and now we're in a war, and this is the result.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing with fiction, especially because you're not only, there are so many different levels and layers to what you're doing, right? Yes, you're looking at the page. Yes, you're sort of deciphering these symbols on the page. You're sitting in a chair doing this. Then you're going into the story. Then you're imagining like a bigger experience. But with fiction, there's this whole other level to it because you're also always aware that what you're reading is made up. Somebody literally sat there and made up the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is it supposed to appeal to our mind at all? And I think it's almost a miracle in a sense, right? That we can glean truth. We can understand what life is or what life is supposed to be from a story that somebody made up.
Yeah.
Right. And not only that, but this is a book, like for instance, with The Great Gatsby, this is a book that I don't particularly like. I don't, not only do I not like it in terms of my own like personal feelings about the book, but I also, there's nobody in the book that's likable. There's nobody that's virtuous. There's no one that particularly shows that they believe in anything.
Yeah,
except for
there's no
themselves.
redemptive figure. There is no Christ archetype, right? It's
There's
really
no
just,
redemptive figure.
Yeah.
Right. There's no redemptive figure in this. There's no, the only salvation, for instance, that Nick has, the protagonist, Nick Carraway, is that he runs away at the end.
Right.
Right. His friend, who we realize when we read the book, again, is not his friend in any way. He doesn't like Jay in the book, Jay Gatsby. And in fact, he shows like a strong contempt for them, which mirrors their own contempt for him, but it's sort of an unspoken contempt.
Right.
And then his friend gets killed. Then there's an SUICIDE by the guy who killed him. And then he leaves and he goes back west, right? He retreats to the west instead of, because one of the themes of the book obviously is East Egg, West Egg. East Egg represents, in the sort of the normie interpretation of the book is that East Egg is old money,
Right.
West Egg is
Which is still a reality in the world
it's
right
still a
now.
reality.
Silicon Valley, the West.
Yes.
The West Coast.
Absolutely.
It's still a reality.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that we got from that book in particular is that even though, and this is actually what I do like about the book. One thing that's brilliant about this book is that it's a great example of writers doing what Ezra Pound said great writers do, which is show, not tell. And so we have to have discernment and read the subtext of the novel, which is showing us that there's so much in the book that's unspoken.
Right.
It's elliptical. It's like, it's illusory. And that is one of the themes of the book, that a lot of their reality is an illusion because there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and that we get an idea of the power structure through the book, that a power structure that still exists.
Right.
And we see in the book that the West Egg and East Egg, the new money and the old people and the old money are two sort of symbiotic branches of a power structure that mix further up the food chain, but they don't mix in their own society.
Right.
Right. You know, so for example, in the book, when Nick Carraway goes with Jay Gatsby, and he takes him to like a speakeasy. In the film, he takes him to a speakeasy, and the film doesn't really get, but neither of the films really get the book,
right?
Because it's a little too impressionistic for a film version. And I think that he goes to a speakeasy and he's introduced to this guy Meyer Wolfsheim, who is obviously supposed to be a Meyer Lansky, Arnold Rothstein like combination.
Yep.
And I discussed this in the stream. They're talking about. He says, Nick says, "Who's that guy?" And right away, even that question shows you that he doesn't fit in,
right?
Because he's asking. A lot of the introductions in the book are just like in American Psycho. Bret Easton Ellis did this in American Psycho, where it's like there's mistaken identity. People don't ask what other people do for a living if they are in the East Egg part. They're part of the old power structure, and really they don't really do anything.
Right.
All they do is run the organization or whatever.
Yeah.
And he says to him, "Oh, that's the guy that fixed the 1919 World Series." And Nick is like, "Well, how is he still walking around? How is he?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, he didn't get arrested." And he's like, No, that's not even a question, man. They can't get him.
Right.
You know, and it's so, and then we find out later in the book that Jay Gatsby and Tom Buchanan have this guy in common, which is this guy, Walter Chase, in the book, who's obviously supposed to represent like Chase Manhattan.
Right.
And the guy at the head of one of the big four banks in America has run out of money and goes to the trafficker mafioso for money, for funding. But that in their own society, that's like unspoken. They can't talk about that. So I think that this book gives us a glimpse into, like I said, a glimpse into a power structure that still exists, and really also gives us a glimpse into like the way that human beings interact when they're not really interacting with one another, if that makes sense. There's a scene where Jordan Baker in the book says, she says, "Oh, they're all sitting around, just lounging around," and she says, "Oh, we should plan something. Isn't that what people do? They plan things." And it's like such a simple, like such a 2-sentence part in the book, but Fitzgerald is showing us right there that these people don't exist like where they plan day-to-day things. They're sort of mimicking humans and what they should be doing, but they don't really have to do anything. Tom can fly away to the south of France whenever he wants. At the end, when the murder happens, they just take off. They take off to Monte Carlo.
Right.
And there's no meaning for them. There's no
responsibility. There's a lack of responsibility and accountability, which is then again full circle. Then again with a Christian purview, sin, judgment. That life itself is actually based upon this concept of responsibility and meaning and pursuing and that is what maturity is, right? So as we mature, we take on more and more responsibility in our lives, and rising to that occasion of fulfilling the responsibilities we have brings in further and deeper meaning into our lives. And we see again, so it's showing how at the top echelon, that's why they're committing adultery and buying things in the lavish lifestyles, because the lack of responsibility of this old money world creates a sort of decrepit person that can't be satiated, and they live a basically sinful life.
When you look at the classical comedies and tragedies, like with Shakespeare, for example, or in the Renaissance or Elizabethan playwrights, or even the Greek playwrights, the thing that separates comedy and tragedy is very small. There's a very thin line. So like Much Ado About Nothing, for example, could be an extremely dark work, right? A woman is lied to. She's told that her husband, her future husband, has cheated on her. She fakes her own death. And we could have Claudio killing himself, and then it's the end, right? That could be extremely dark. But instead, she reveals herself, and we have a wedding at the end. So the classical comedy, the only difference between comedy and tragedy is that a comedy ends on a high note with happiness, and a tragedy ends in darkness and death. And that's why comedies, even now in movies, oftentimes end with weddings, because it's a symbol of promise and future.
And then in Frankenstein, which we read before that, it's the same thing. You have a character who is he's unmotivated by, he has no interest in money. He actually has no interest in, the book is on its surface is supposed to be about, like, there's this doctor who's interested in science and he wants to pursue science, and but really genius. Yes, but really he's motivated by, he wants to live forever. He wants to break the bonds of death.
Sounds
and
familiar.
He wants to do it through his own creation. Right. And he self-experiments. And I don't look at literary works as having morals. I don't, as having, like, trying to take a moral from the story, or having any sort of, a lot of these books have no, like you said, no moral compass. But if we're going to get anything from Frankenstein, it's the fact that this guy is in this so-called noble pursuit, but his activities are all infernal. They're all decrepit and decadent, and he self-experiments on himself. He fractures his own mind, and then at the end of the book, he sinks into the abyss.
But it does have a moral, not that the author, Mary Shelley does, or she's putting that into the book. It's that, again, this concept of logos. It's the hermeneutical, it's the exegetical techniques of what is truth, using that as the lens. So, all these different, queer theory or whatever it is, a different hermeneutical lenses. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of different stuff. But when we bring the most truthful one, which is logos itself, we see this thing recapitulate itself in the present moment with Silicon Valley and transhumanism and these sort of new understandings of what it means to be a man or a woman or biology, and this mixing with our own creations, which are created in our own fallen image. Right. In this idea. So it's like, well, I want eternal life, but I don't want it by following the morality and the life of Christ, the teachings of Christ, God, eternality entering into the person, historical human flesh. I want it through my own endeavors, and this is where that Gnostic enterprise of sort of escaping reality, escaping, again, the logos, escaping that which is real. And that's where, again, the Gnostics had a totally different understanding of the God of the Old Testament, which totally changes the way they understand creation itself as inherently evil, not inherently good. And so it's like, yes, the authors don't put them in there, but the reason why they stand up as great texts throughout time is because they do glean truths when we use the correct hermeneutics to actually look at these texts and see what they're saying.
And that's one of the problems in movies now, that all of the characters are so unlikable. So who are we? And I think this is a symptom of, like you were saying, post-enlightenment, also a kind of what I call a post-modernism.
Yeah, nice.
We've gone past, modernity ends in 1945. We have the A-bomb. Then we have a postmodern period from 1945 to like 2001. That's the postmodern era. Then we have the war on terror from 2001 to 2020. And now we're in Great Reset era, which is triple postmodern era, which is an era of complete, it's not even nihilistic nothingness. It's a war on the self. It's aesthetic terror.
Yeah.
And so you go and see this Napoleon movie, which looks beautiful in terms of the trailers. There's the scene of Napoleon like standing by the Sphinx in Egypt, and you think, okay, this is going to be where he did these things. But the entire movie was basically things just happen.
Reading as an activity, an activity in terms of action, right? An active thing that especially adults do. And the other is this sort of classical Greek concept of reading or of knowledge. And I think that in terms of reading, Ezra Pound in ABC of Reading and Bloom in How to Read and Why, they both talk about how reading is an activity there's nothing else that takes the place of reading. No. It's like you said at the beginning, we have this book here, and we've got these two, like we had a tree, and then we made it into these sheafs of paper, and then we printed these weird symbols on it.
Yeah.
Right. And somehow your mind looks at the page, and then you stop looking at the page and deciphering the symbols on the page. And then you get into this sort of activity where it takes you onto the next page and onto the next page. And you're living this, your imagination or your mind is living this other life. It's like what, Coleridge called the willing suspension of disbelief, right? It's like with Shakespeare, which is that if you go to a play or if you watch a film, but if you go there, you are always aware that you're sitting in a seat and you're watching human beings like on a stage pretending, right? They're like saying words and they're like doing, sort of awkward actions, and they're wearing costumes. And that's literally what you're doing. But somehow your mind suspends its disbelief, and you start to go into the things that they're saying and what are they doing. And there's this other life, and the other life is if it's a great work, is your own life, right? It appeals to your own life. It may not even be, if we only read works of literature for what we have experienced in life, and that's sort of one of the things in education is like trying to sell works of literature to whatever the student body is, whatever level, that will appeal to their experience. Well, most people haven't had much experience.
Right.
So what you want to do is, it's not a sense of escapism, but it's a sense of like, there's something bigger. There's a bigger life.
Well, and speaking
Go
on that
ahead.
experience, again, that there is a reality that exists. And again, and so from our understanding as Christians, that is the Logos, that is the Word of God, that the Trinity, the Father, spoke the world into existence through the second person, through the Word, through the Logos, through the structure of logic and reason and truth and all these different things. And that is what constructed this world. And so reality itself is the Logos. Literature is this ability for us to participate in this activity of language and then reiterate reality itself through fictional landscapes. And so it's then encountering these fictional landscapes, but in the sense you're also countering reality because it has to be based on that living reality.
This postmodernism is here. And can it lead to something, a restructuring or recapturing of something that you and I, who are in this sort of traditional space, do you think we can see that? Do you think it's possible?
I think so. I mean, God can make the crooked way straight. Can use evil for good ends. And I think that as far as art is concerned, we go through arcs and, eons and eras of art, which seem to be reactions against, it's almost like when I don't know physics, but an equal and opposite reaction to the thing that's just happened. And it would make sense that with all of the, just obviously the negative stuff in the world is so palpable right now, that it seems like it would lead to a kind of backlash leading to goodness. But at the same time, I keep in mind something, previous era. I mean, like, look at the plague. Right. Look at the Black Plague that lasts so long, and there's death everywhere, and there's so much bad stuff, but good comes out of it, and good works of art come out of the plague. And I think that, and eventually leading to the Renaissance. And I think that, I don't know. I think it will be recognizable when we see it, but we've got a whole lot more degradation in the works. Unfortunately, I don't mean to blackpill anybody. I just
feel
think
the same
that,
way.
Yeah.
I think there's a technocratic elite that literally, like a computer, does not have value. Like they don't hold values. Like there's nothing eternal, and it's all utilitarian, and that's a pretty scary crew in my mind.
Yeah. I think that goodness and virtue are such active things that, Satan can't create anything. It's all mimicry. It's all mimicry and surface level imitation, right? And some sort of offering for something monetary or whatever it happens to be. And that seems to override all art right now. There's, for instance, in publishing, there's hardly anything good being published right now because of a number of different factors. People are afraid to publish anything edgy. They're afraid to go against the type. The people who run the publishing industry and all the major industries that run art are all part of what, you know, like you said, a technocratic elite that is pushing something that wants to depopulate and kill the human spirit and terrorize people on a individual basic level. But we have ways around that, and we have ways of seeing through that, which is personal connection.
That's
Right.
right.
Religion, personal connection, family, and friends. And no matter what happens, the only things that can stop that from happening, like for instance, friendship, you know, and real life friendship, the only things that can impede that are when we decide that we don't want to do that anymore. You know, we have to be the active people that like make the phone call, you know, or call our friends or
Yeah, it's
ask how you're
gorgeous.
doing. And another thing I've gotten, you know, not advice, but I'll just say that for people is that oftentimes people, especially in this time, it's like a test. You want to put your friends to the test, and they will never pass that test. They'll never be good enough for that. So all you can do is treat people how you want to be treated. You know, if you want to be called like when you get your tooth out and you're in pain, or you know your girlfriend broke up with you, you call your friends when you figure that's happening to them, because they're not going to call you when it happens. If they do, it's a blessing. If not, you can't rebuke them for it, you know.
You're actually, that's a crazy, that's a situation going on at this moment in my life, and I am going to make a call.